I'm your host, Riem Zin Labidin, and you are listening to Tech Tag Podcast. Today, our guest is Paulo Baena. He's a backend software engineer. Paulo is my former colleague and he's a very friendly person. He has an inspiring journey. So now let's meet with him and learn more about his journey. Hello, Paulo. I'm very happy to have you here and thanks for accepting the invitation. Welcome to Tech Tech.
Thank you, Ian. It's very nice for us to talk again.
Yes, so you can introduce yourself for the audience. Who is Paulo? Tell us some fun facts about you.
Sure, let's see. I'll try not to make this as a technical interview introduction. I'm Paulo. We work together in Germany, right? So I was living in Germany between 2016 until 2022. I moved here to Portugal, but I'm originally from Brazil. I've been a software engineer as my whole career since 14 years ago. Time flies, right? And I started my career in Brazil, moved to Europe, started working with different technologies here. I think we met on this company that uses Scala. So this is what I've been doing and working this last 6 years or so. What can I tell about me?
Your hobbies.
Yes. My main hobby. My main hobby is spending time with my son, Daniel. He's 4 years old. He's a lot of fun, has a lot of energy, and that gives me a lot of energy as well because I need to keep up with him, right?
Yes.
Other than that, I really enjoy dancing. So I've been doing dancing classes for the last 6 months or so, which I used to do in Brazil, but then I stopped. I'm back to it again. It's a lot of fun. It's interesting because I used to play the drums when I was younger.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized how dancing is also another way to use not only music, but your body, which is the instrument on dancing to express yourself through music, right? So back then was the drum. So it's a physical instrument that you interact with, but dancing also another way to express yourself through music, which has been a really fun thing that I've been doing. And I also love traveling. Every now and then when I have time, I like to go to new places, meet people from those places and learn more about their culture, which is mostly the things I like food and also music and also anything related to how people live.
Nice. You mentioned that 13 years ago you started. How did you get into tech in general? Was it like because of your education path? And do you remember what was the inspiration that make you choose this path?
Yeah, I think this is a very good question. I was thinking about that the other day. I started like crawling back in time in my mind and seeing where did it start. And some things that I remember, I don't know, around 11, 12 years old. My father, which was also an engineer, he was an electrical engineer. And I also am by uh, my bachelor's was in electrical engineer, even though I went to software after that. And he bought this PC, this 486 PC. It was the 90s. And I really found that fascinating, right? In the beginning, it started with games, but I remember having my DOS terminal and learning about commands and start digging that and being very interested about how that machine worked, right? Back then, maybe you're going to sound that I'm really old, but back then there was not even internet, at least nothing. It was not so common, right?
Yeah.
And I remember my first experience with the computer was playing with BBS, which was bulletin board systems that one could host their computer, and then you would, like with a fixed line, call that computer with your computer, with your modem, and establish a connection. Probably some people remember those screeching sounds when that was the way to communicate via computers, to connect, right? The handshake to start a connection. And you have like message boards, some small games. You could upload files, download files. It was very rudimental comparing to what the internet is now. And that thing was catching more and more my attention back then. Was really, I used to spend the whole night calling other BBS. You have to know the number of the BBS, right? To call it. There was no Google like search engine or nothing like that. Then I got my first contact with programming. I remember my father worked for this Brazilian telecommunications company. It was a state company. He was a researcher and developer there.
Mm-hmm.
And he used to bring books for me. The very first language that I learned was Pascal. And then after that, C. And I was fascinated about writing programs that could do stuff like building very silly, but things that would solve maybe mathematical problems. And then I remember having this math teacher when I was, I don't know, in the seventh grade. I was a bit older, 14 years old, and I was always very interested in math. And he started also teaching me a bit of programming, which is funny because how when we start learning something, how passionate
Mm-hmm.
we are about that, right? And
Yeah.
those memories are very like, emotional memories for me. Learning from my father or from this teacher was a very good influence for me, and I think that's where it started. Then it was a natural path for me. I maybe took a bit of detour because, like I said, I went to study electrical engineering
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
because probably influence of my father as well, because he was working as a telecommunications company, and we talk about a lot about that, about his work. And I also wanted to study telecommunications. So in my bachelor's, I studied more like how waves propagate on cellular antennas and on mobile communications, other than software, computer science, and things like that. But just as I graduated and started working, I already went to work to this on this telecom project, but it was already software. The software was already growing a lot and dominating things.
And your first job, how was it? Have you directly find out what exactly you would like to do, or it is like you find an opportunity to work with everything? How it was exactly?
Yeah, I think back then it was a good match because it was telecom. It was building software for these telephony exchanges. It was for Ericsson, so they had a soft switch telephony exchanges, which related to telecommunications and protocols and things that I got interested to study in university. But it was also software, which was something that I was passionate about on my teenage years, right? So it was very compelling to me, my first job, because it united those two things that I was interested through the years that I was a student per se.
Mhm. And how long you worked there?
Maybe 2 to 3 years. Yeah, I think it was about that. It was all these young people just coming out of university. I have still very good memories about it because everyone was new, everyone was wanting to learn, and at the same time, everyone was very young, fresh out of university. So I made great friends that I still am in touch today.
Mhm.
Actually, one of them was my network connection per se that bring me to Germany, right? So he was moved to Germany. We were still friends. We were still talking, and that's how my connection that opened the doors to come to Germany.
Mhm.
Some years after that, I think it was 9 to 8 years after that, after my first job.
So you continued working in Brazil after that first job, but then later, with the connection, you got recommended to work in Germany.
Yes, and that's where I started with Scala. But yes, I worked more. Then I moved to work with mobile phones, Android, which was also something quite new back then. I work both for LG and Samsung. But what we used to do is customizing the Android framework for Latin American countries.
And do you remember the challenges that you had faced that you felt you need to deal with or you have to avoid or like things, obstacles?
Yeah, I think some of them we still need to face it through our careers, right? One thing, for example, I was not a computer scientist, but I was starting to work with software. So in the beginning, I always felt this imposter syndrome. We had all these other people that came and study their whole bachelor's specifically about computer science, and I didn't. I always felt, okay, maybe I'm a little behind here. But as you start working and you see that you're able to do all the things that other people are doing, and you learn, and then you see it's fine. But I think this is something that on a personal level is a bit difficult to manage, right?
Yeah.
And I think with over the years, the tech, and when we say tech, it's like software, became more and more attractive to workers, right? So a lot of people changed their their careers in the background. I know
Yes.
about people that were lawyers or other type of professionals, engineers from other areas that switched to software. And I believe these other knowledges, these other experiences are very valuable. I think this is a tricky word, heterogeneity, which is having all kinds of background, different ways, and not everyone having the exactly same background. It's really important to foment lots of things, different ways to deal with a problem, to tackle a problem, and other ways of thinking about how should we organize our work, or how should to bring different questions to places where when everyone is very similar from a very similar background, this could not arise.
Yeah, you're right. It's a really good point because if the people have the same perspective, they will miss many other angles to solve the problem, and it's very valuable to have this different knowledge. And I think programming is accessible. It is like it is possible to become a programmer, whatever you have studied and your background. I think many people are realizing this. I mean, the culture, the old fashioned companies who are interpreting the CV in like just in the document level and not in the personal skills, how they are capable to work with the team and to solve problems and the way of thinking. And it will change.
Still, tech culture is it's oriented in within some certain values, right? There is this image of the developer being very individualistic and super skilled, and that can work just by himself. But reality is quite different from that, right? When you need to build something which is bigger than what one developer can do, you need to collaborate. And
Yeah.
I think this is a big issue on software development and software processes and so on. How can one make people to collaborate well in a culture that values a lot this individualistic, super skilled developer, let's say, right? I remember bullshit terms like the hero developer and the 10 times developer, stuff like that, those PR things to sell whatever they're trying to sell. In real life, in real software projects, collaborating with people is the most important thing. How well can you do things with others, and how can you build big things, trying to communicate well with your peers and to make things smoother, right? In the end, what we're trying to do, this whole business, what we do, we transmit and transform data, right?
Yes.
And this is also valid to our relationships on as developers or with other parts of a business with, I don't know, people that work on product and try to transmit this ideas and informations to us. So focusing only on the very technical aspects of it, I think it's not so productive. We should also take care about how we transmit and transform this information on higher levels among us developers and also among our organization. And it's difficult. And the places that I work that I like the most are the places that people were doing a good job to communicate on those levels.
Yeah, I think it's an important skill to have. Also, even the person is very skilled technically, sometimes they cannot be a good fit when becoming opinionated maybe, or something that makes the team blocked, or maybe makes the product doesn't satisfy exactly the customer. And this is why like we need like a human understanding also, not only becoming like a robot because of our skill.
Yes, definitely. Because as I see, right, and this is changing and definitely has changed since I started working. But this cyborg-like creature, which sometimes the software developer is idealized, it's very far from reality, right? People, we are human beings. We have to deal with our feelings, how people see us, and how our work is perceived and how well we are collaborating to build stuff. And those are a lot more about how we relate as human beings and friends, right? And I think I've been very lucky because most of the environments that I work, I felt like that are environment that you feel that you're working with your friends,
Yeah.
people that you can trust, people that are there to help and collaborate. And I think this is very valuable, this way of managing teams and try to do these team building activities, which is pretty much hanging out and having fun with your friends, right? This is
Yes.
just becoming friends with people that you need to work with every day. And I think this
Yes.
is the best way to build a good environment to work with.
Yeah, I think it's important. Otherwise, people will have like barriers. After working in different companies in Brazil, it was towards mobile development, or how? What is it?
Yeah, so I worked on this R&Ds for Samsung, and I was in Samsung back then. But what I used to do is to customize the telephony framework for the Latin American countries, right?
Mhm.
So there was a lot of bug fixing involved in that. There was a lot of field testing, which means getting a couple of prototypes of a new phone and going on field and testing with the carriers, right? So in the real live networks and see if you find bugs and stuff like that. Or you need to customize because those networks had some specificities that are different from other countries. We tweaked the software to make it work smoothly. And I was a bit ambivalent about how I felt. It was fun because I had to travel a lot.
Mhm.
I could travel whole Latin America to run those, to work together with the testers on those field tests and to also be there to, I don't know, debug any problems or already patch the software and stuff and so on. But again, I was not really building anything. It was more about just adjusting things.
Mm.
And I was really interested in going back to building things and really writing software and things from scratch. Then I started to look what was going on. I think big data was the big hype of that year.
Mhm.
Is those map and reduce operations using parallelism. And I think that's how I got in touch for the first time with Scala. Actually, not. Actually, it was my friend in Germany that pointed me to that because he were working with Scala. But then I think it was around then I started, okay, but why is this being used and why it's being so trendy? And that's how I started to study a little bit. I did this interview with a company in Frankfurt, which I had this connection. And that's how I moved to Germany, started working with Scala, which was very different from what I was doing before.
It must be like a big change. Besides starting building software and a new language, etc., also a new country, a new language also, and everything.
Yes. Yeah, for me, it was like starting my career again. It was starting from scratch. I had basically no experience in that,
Yeah.
or at least no professional experience with that technology, and also with web development, which we're doing backend development. And yeah, it was a big shift, but I think it was good. I really enjoy the path that I took. I enjoy a lot more building things. Like I said, I think the very first contact that I had with technology was programming, and since then I was passionate about it, and it was nice to go back to be really writing software.
And during that time, like if I imagine it from my perspective, it's scary because you are going to start something new and also in a different country. What makes you keep going? So maybe someone is listening and having the same situation. How, like maybe you can share about your experience on that.
Sure, of course. I think it's a challenge, right?
Yeah.
And now talking a bit more about moving to a country which the culture is very different from mine, right? Brazil and Germany has very different culture, and that reflects on the work environment as well. I remember it was a small company and had some problems, of course, as every other company, and it was very different in the way that people handle those problems than how I was used to in Brazil and in Samsung, right? Samsung is a huge company, it has a very top-down hierarchy, and in a smaller company, especially within the German culture, which I think people are more direct when addressing problems and discussing those. This direct style of communication was something new for me, and the challenges there were huge ones. But I think it was a valuable lesson to just say what was going on, and to work on this smaller company where the hierarchy was not so present, right? In Samsung, for example, you have your manager, then you have some director, and then you have some VP, and the way that things are is already set. You don't discuss so much how the work is being done. And it was really important. And I think it was very valuable for me to improve the way that I communicate and feel more comfortable saying, I don't know, things that bothers me in a company. But regarding the moving and the culture and how to adapt, this is really difficult. And I think I was lucky because there were friends at this company. So like I said, it was a friend that connection that made me find this role, and things were a bit easier due to that. But I see time and time again people that comes from one different country to other, which the culture is very different, that don't have friends or it doesn't adapt to the culture, that they just give up, go back, and because this impacts everything on our lives, right? It's not only about the work, it's about your friends, the things that you do when you're not working, your life. So it's tricky, and being able to connect, to have friends, people that you trust, that can help you guide in that process, people that already went through the issues that you're facing now. And this is super important. And I think, especially when Germany is a country that hires lots of people from other countries, right? And
Yeah.
I see this more and more as a concern. How can I hire this person, but also how can I make it easier for them to integrate, to be feel a bit more at home, not only at work but also in other aspects of their lives.
Yeah. I think also like the way how the company would offer the relocation package, and also would offer to attend some language classes, like German classes or something. I think it is helpful for integration, and it will show the culture of the company that they help people to integrate, and they are inclusive also, to show the culture of the new country in some way.
Yes, definitely. And this is very important stuff. And it makes sense business wise, right? Your company is spending some money and to hire this person, and it has a interest for this person to adapt, be happy, and to continue,
Yes.
right?
Yeah, exactly. And then, like, when you started the job in Germany, and how did you progress in your career?
I really liked it. Was a big shift for me. So from just adapting, patching, and integrating software, started writing a lot of code and learning a lot, progressing a lot. I think I was really lucky to be working with Scala and to get there or to take advantage of the concepts of this language and of functional programming and how more pleasant it was to write software that you can trust when you read the type signature of a method, right?
Mm,
There is no hidden things on pure functional code. You read that and you know what it's doing.
yeah,
And then I started to work more, to move into the more functional aspects of Scala, start using cats and then learning Zio, and using those effect systems become really enjoyable to work and to write complex code that needs to deal with concurrency and makes it easier to reason about
yeah.
what you're trying to do. So I think I was very lucky. It was a bit by chance that I started working with that technology, but I still do it up today and I quite enjoy it.
Yeah, it's very important that you are enjoying what you are doing. This way you get motivated to learn more about it. After the company in Frankfurt, you moved to Leiventhal, or?
No, then I went to work in a company. I moved to Hamburg. So,
Mm,
but back then I was getting married, and we thought about what could be a good city in Germany to live in, and cities like Hamburg and Berlin was easier to find jobs that you could do with speaking English, right? Because I
yes.
was not proficient in Germany, and also would be easier for my partner back then. So I ended up looking for jobs in Berlin and Hamburg. I found this job in a company called Credit Tech, which was digital lending. It was a very cool experience because it was a big transitional phase for the development team. So they had lots of contractors, all of them left. Then it was just a couple of people left, me and a friend, and we started trying to take on the work that was being done and trying to complete what they used to call the new architecture platform, which was the usual thing, right? They used to have this old platform and a monolithic architectural design, and we would like to make it a bit more break down in microservices, make it scalable, and all the things that involves work like that.
Mm.
The company ended up being bankrupt, which was very interesting because it was a big surprise for most of people.
It was unexpected.
It was, I think, that was also the where the pandemic started. So it was a lot of uncertainty. It was difficult to see or feel confident about what was coming next with the pandemic starting and so on. And yes, then that's where I joined Live Intent, and that's where we met, right?
Yeah. Before continuing about the next job at Liventant, I think it would be valuable to know more about how you dealt with, like, because now currently I hear a lot about layoffs, for example, and many people
Mhm.
are struggling with this, that suddenly there is uncertainty, like during these days since COVID and the war and like many factors in the beginning when you face that situation, and to go forward, like there need like some hope and more. motivation to continue the journey?
Right. Yeah, I think it's a good question, right? It's always the unknown, right? When things or the job market as it's going now starts to get a bit depressed and there is a lot of uncertainty going on, it's difficult because we live in times where we are very individualistic about our careers, right? And this, I think, on tech was also because the job market was very good for tech workers in the last 10 years or so. So we didn't feel the need to be more cooperative, not only within our works, but also within how we work together
Mhm.
on as tech workers, right? So the tendency when things go bad is to feel very alone and feel a bit helpless. I think at the same time, the job market is still pretty good for tech workers, especially software development has a lot of demand. I think things are shifting a bit. So there is a lot of tech layoffs that happen on the big companies like Twitter, Google, and stuff like that. But now, and this is something that I've been reading and I found very interesting, mostly on the US. So other fields, other industries like retail or agriculture, they can now start hiring tech workers, which they couldn't 2 years ago or 1 year ago. And I think a lot of this shift can start to happen. And not only the tech companies do all the tech stuff. So I think maybe we can see more and more other industry starting to have their own tech divisions other than simply contracting the big ones to do their tech work. But in a personal level, yes, it's difficult. And again, this individualistic way that we see our careers and handle our careers makes even more difficult. So being able to have connections, to have friends, to share your concerns and to be able to have also support from them, it's very important.
Yeah, yeah, totally. In case of layoffs, also when it is a common problem and people talk about it together and try to figure out and try to deal with this issue, it's helpful to know that it's okay, you can keep going and look for other job and there will be many opportunities out there. It just psychologically it can be difficult, especially for those who are starting.
Yes, yes, definitely. I think I remember when Credit Tech went bankrupt, and in my team we had this common spreadsheet of job openings with Scala, and we're helping each other and just talking about how the interviews went, and it made it a lot easier to deal with it. Even though it was back then the job market was way better than it is now. So I think everyone was quite confident that would find new jobs quite easily. But still,
Yeah.
this kind of cooperation and support was very helpful.
That's true. After that, when you got the job at Liventant, are there some learning experiences and how did you progress during that time?
Yes, definitely I learned a lot at Live Intent because I believe the engineering solution, the tech stack, it was very mature, or at least very mature comparing to my previous company. Getting more depth knowledge about everything that involves a distributed system, right?
Yeah.
All the part of monitoring. How do you scale your services? How do you observe them? How do you orchestrate them? And all these things were something that I started working with Credit Tech, and we had lots of issues trying to improve. We did a lot of improvement, but it was all new for
Mhm.
us. Working live intent and having to get in touch with way more mature tech stack and deployable solution, it was very, very good for me. I believe the engineers that I worked on live intent was very high. I could learn a lot with them. And of course, mentioning you, VM, I learned a lot with you. And it was for me, if I talk only about the tech side of things, was the best company that I work. Could learn a lot on that.
It's really good to hear that. You are collaborative and you are from my favorite people in Life Intent. We worked together a lot and we paired together and I learned from you.
Yes, it was a lot of fun. I
Yeah.
really liked pairing with people, and with you, it was always fun times. We did some work, but we also had fun, made jokes, and it
Yeah.
was always a pleasant experience.
It's good to mention also about remote job. Was it your previous job before, like Live Intent? Was it remotely or like only later this concept of remote job started to appear?
Yeah, no, it was only after the pandemic started, and but my first like remote job, it was at Live Intent.
Yeah, and it was also valuable that sometimes when there is this team building or team events, when we gather together, it makes the team more close, etc.
Yes, I think that is super important. And in the beginning, I remember I always, oh, that would be my dream way of working, just staying home. But after the pandemic started, I started to feel pretty lonely, right? You're just seeing faces over your screen, but where's the real human connection here?
Mm.
And
Yeah.
then I started to realize I really missed being with people. And I still like my focus is to work remote first, but being in office sometimes seeing people doing this, what people like to describe as team building activities, but it's just having fun with your friends and
Yeah.
getting your connections to be deeper and to actually learning about them. This is super important.
Yeah.
And I think this remote work, I hope that it grows and doesn't go back to that way that everyone needs to be at office. But I think people also need to be together sometimes. I don't think people love that much being alone at home. What people don't like is to commute and waste half an hour, 1 hour, 2 hours every day, and that's I think is the compelling part of the remote work. But being together with friends and having these connections are also important.
Yeah. If it will always stay this way, that there could be a flexibility, etc., it is better than going back to 100% going to the office.
Yeah, exactly. I totally agree with you on that. Indeed. Like even after I moved to Porto, I still worked a bit, right, at Live Intent with you guys, and then I joined another company. But most of the time, I was going to this co-working space here in Porto, where I live now, because I missed having people around. I missed stop working for a bit, having a break, and have a coffee, talking with someone. I did friends there, which was nice. So indeed, it's the flexibility. I think is the sweet spot for it. If you want to work from home, it's fine. But every time that you want to meet your friends, come to office, have lunch together, I think it's also very important.
Yeah, it also increases the productivity because when the person is comfortable with like the environment they are in, they will be more productive. I believe that like everyone has different character, different way of handling pressure or stress.
Yes.
This is why it's better to have the flexibility and so the person know that they have to be productive so they know their way of how they can be productive.
Yes. Yes. Definitely. And that's I think a bit about what we're talking in the beginning, right? We are humans. We have issues. We have emotions, and we have all that unique characteristics, and each one is different. So what can might work for one person might not work for the other one, and being ready to accommodate that as a team, as a let's say here a self-organizing team, and understanding what your peers need and how they are, and it's very important. And that's why going back to our get-togethers and spending time together is also important.
Yeah, exactly. And then, like, after you moved to Porto and you started like new other challenges, would you like to share like some of the learning experience there? And where are you now, like in your career?
Yeah. Well, the reason that I moved here, I think, also connects with a talking point that we had earlier, which is how do you feel at home
Mm,
when you move to another country, right? And
yes.
I lived almost 6 years in Germany, but I was really not feeling that comfortable as it was my home. And we decided to move here to Portugal, which is both, I think, geographically and culturally the middle of the way between Germany and Brazil. We're on the western tip of Europe. The language is the same, even though they are a bit different from Brazilians, but also way more open than people in the north
Sure.
of Europe, right? In Germany, for example. I think that's where I try to accommodate some personal needs, which is to live in a place that is sunnier, that a place that I feel more connected,
Mm,
that my son will also be happier. Maybe he quite
yeah.
enjoying the sun. He quite enjoying going to the beach. He quite enjoy having friends that speaks his language. And yeah, and I try to accommodate that with my career. So I shift into being a contractor because most of the work within Scala are pretty much within the UK and probably Netherlands and Germany, and try also to accommodate that as being a remote contractor, right? Because
Mm,
that's I'm living here now. That's how it made sense. It's been good. I think it was very important for me, and I think I'm feel more happy, more I don't know. It's things has improved a lot in my personal life since I made this decision and moved here.
mm,
But yeah, talking a little bit about what I did next, I as a contractor I started working with this Dutch slash Kenyan company, which they do this platform for small farmers in Kenya to do financing and providing agricultural products for them. This was really interesting. I traveled to Kenya last year and went to the fields and went to meet the agents that work with our application. And this is one of the things that I really love about our work. When you see people actually using the tool, the thing that you created, and having feedback, right?
yeah.
This is something that sometimes as a software developer, we don't get the chance to do that much, right? To have real customer feedback, to see how they use, to see how it's being interacted with whatever you're building. And as I said before, I love traveling. I love going to different new places where the culture is very different from mine. So it was great. I really enjoyed the time there. It was super cool.
Yeah, I can imagine it's interesting experience. And what is your current state now? Are you working in a company or what is going on?
There is the good part and the bad part about being a contractor. I think this flexibility has a bit of both. So my contract has finished. It was after 1 year, and now I have time, so I'm just taking some time off, relaxing a bit. It was a difficult, a bit stressful year, moving, personal stuff. So now I'm taking some time off and just now starting looking for a new remote contract role here from Portugal and planning for what's coming next for the next year. But yeah, like I said, being a contractor has this flexibility that you can stay a little bit, taking your time and not working, and then resuming your work or your career after you're ready.
And as you are looking for a job, what is exactly you are looking for? I hope that people who are working in companies who are hiring, they can find you a good fit for their company.
Yeah, it's always a challenging time, right? To find something that works both for you and also for the company that you're going to join, and find this fit. Is I think it must be done with attention and with care. Yeah, like I said, I'm living in Portugal now. This is where I'm based. I'm looking for contract roles, which makes more sense because, like I mentioned, most of the projects are in North Europe, and it needs to be remote. I love going and meeting people on the office. I think even after I moved to Porto, right, we did that a couple of times. We
Yes.
met at the Berlin back then. I did the same on my last company. So I went to Amsterdam one time. I went to Kenya, but basically I'm looking for a remote contract. And I would love to continue working with Scala. It's been a great career after I moved into that technology. I believe I learned a lot, and I think there's still a lot to learn and to contribute using that.
Yeah, and also you have different knowledge about like AWS services and the infrastructure, etc.
Ah, yes. These days it's all about the cloud, isn't it?
Yes, your future company will be lucky to have you. I wish you good luck.
Thank you, yeah. You're very kind.
Thank you. So, to wrap up this awesome interview, I would like to ask you, do you have like something that you wished if you have known earlier? Like, is there like something that you would advise your younger self?
Yes. I don't know, this might sound really chilled and relaxed advice, but the first thing is that it will all be fine, right?
Mhm.
Everything is going to work out if you put love into whatever you're doing. So don't worry so much. Just go and do whatever you are passionate about doing. I think the second thing is people are nice. People are really nice. I maybe it could be anecdotal, it could be my experience, but I mostly work with very, very kind and nice people on software. And I believe this is a true statement. And that makes me trust people when I join a new environment, a new company. But in the beginning, I was always had my concerns about how people is going to be, how going to perceive me, so on. And a third one is related to that, is that everyone has a bit of imposter syndrome. Everyone sometimes don't feel that confident about what they're doing, feel that they're being judged, feel that they are, I don't know, not good, which is not true. This is just how our mind works. So it doesn't mean that knowing that are going to not make you feel a bit of imposter sometimes, but it will help you to remind that you're not, and that things are going to work out.
Yeah, I like all of the advices that you gave, and I hope also many people will learn and get inspired by your experiences. And I really enjoyed talking to you. It's very nice to see you.
Thank you, Ian. I can say the same. And this was super fun.
Yes,
Yeah, I'm really happy that we did this talk.
me too, and thank you for your time. I wish you all the best.
Thanks, Ian. Likewise. See you.
See you. I'm looking forward to our next episode with a new guest and new inspiring story. Until then, stay safe and stay tuned to our next episode. Tic Tac, tackle the inspiration.